Shorebikes Nation, without further ado, let's welcome our guest of honor today, the award-winning artist and writer for Marvel, Image, Boom Studios, and come February, he'll be adding Dynamite Comics to his long list of accolades. Let's welcome Declan Shalvey to the show. Declan, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
No, please stop. Please, no more. No, keep going. It's fine.
They can go on all day. Declan, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks for asking.
Declan,
how are you?
You know what, man? I'm not too shabby, but I've started the year off with a bunch of just dentist appointments. I've had like 2 or 3 in the last 16 days, and yeah, it's just I've had a crash course into our dental system here in the States, and it's just as terrible as healthcare. So not too everything else is great though, but my mouth apparently is not doing so fine. So there we go.
Yeah, well, the sound from your mouth is good, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, they can't. Luckily, it's not impacting my ability to podcast and talk and whatnot.
At least it doesn't sound hollow when you're like, you're doing okay.
But for me, man, I'd be committed, even if my mouth was wired shut or numb. I'd be on this podcast with you talking, because I know there's a massive. There's a massive time difference between us. So I do want to say thank you so much for hopping on. It's like, what, 11 p.m. your time? 6 o'clock my time?
Yeah, just after 11 now, yeah.
Okay.
But no, that's very kind of you, but I'm used to it at this stage. This is kind of it's like, it's not too late for you, and I tend to work late anyway, so it just about works out okay. I've done some podcasts where it's later than this, and like I can do it, but I realize my energy just falls, so this is just right.
Yeah, you're over there taking a nap time during segment breaks and all that. Declan, where are you at now? I understand that you were born in Dublin and then you grew up in, is it Clare County or County Clare? Are you still there?
Yeah, County Clare. Yeah, I'm in County Clare now. I was living in Dublin for a long time, but I moved back to the West, as we call it, about just over a year ago. So I'm back in the town I grew up in, where I was like reading comics and wanted drawing in the back of my school copies, and so so I'm back in my old stomping grounds, which is a little surreal, but it's nice to be back, having like achieved the dream I always had as a kid. It's kind of nice.
Now, what is the comic scene like in County Clare? Like, has it changed much since the days of you being young and reading comics? Like, has that culture grown and whatnot?
I know it's small here. I mean, I think you're looking at the comic scene in Clare. Although I know there's a couple of lads who've been doing like small press stuff. There's a new artist I whose work I quite like is living in Shannon, which is like a 20-minute drive down the road. But a lot of it is has been centered in Dublin, but there's a few people around, like Will Sliney's in Cork, and Nate Stockman is in Donegal, and Danny Earls is in Wexford, I think. Like, so it was the indie scene was very concentrated in Dublin, but I think some of us who've made proper careers can afford to be outside the hub, as it were. So there's a nice mix in the country. There's a nice mix of like professionals for years, and also like a fairly like solid indie scene where people are doing their self-published books and things like that. So there's a nice mix.
Yeah, and before we hit record, you were telling me about a conference or a convention in Italy, and I know like there's been a lot of those popping up. I think Italy and like Paris are the two that come, and I guess England as well. That come to mind when it comes to like long-standing comic conventions. So, have you noticed like a change or an increase like in comic conventions taking place in like in Europe in general?
Well, I mean, I came up in the UK scene, so there's like the odd convention here in Ireland, but like when I was starting out, there was nothing. So. Or nothing that was really of use to somebody trying to break in, So I went to a lot of shows in the UK. Bristol was big, Birmingham was big. Now there's a Thought Bubble is one of the bigger ones in the UK. And like now the NCM shows have taken over, and they're very pop culture heavy, and they seem to do very, very well. So it's definitely kicked off more in the UK. Europe tends to be no, actually there's a few I don't know how to describe them. Companies who do shows around Europe. Like I think they're called Heroes, but I remember I did one in Spain once, and I know they do them in like Netherlands and Belgium. So there are some companies doing the pop culture thing,
Okay.
but there's also very long running art centric festivals like Avila. I think is in Spain. I've never done that, but I've been to
Hmm.
Angoulême in France and Lucca in Italy a few times. So you'll have there's a lot of stuff going on in Europe for sure. For which is great now for me because you can do all these lovely great shows. But when I was starting out, it was really America where I was trying
Yeah.
to hit. So I did Heroes and New York loads of times, San Diego, a few Galaxy Cons. Like I try and mix it up so I'm not only doing one type of show because
Yeah.
they can get a little repetitive and the novelty wears off. So I think in October I did a pop culture show in Italy, and then I did New York Comic Con, and then I did Lucca in Italy, and then I did Columbus in the States. So I mixed up a few very pop culture and arty festivals that way. But that way you're always kind of engaged. You
Yeah.
appreciate both for what they are.
It sounds like you have a healthy amount of airline miles as well from the sounds of it too.
Yeah, I mean, I never was one to have any interest in traveling, but I was talking to a friend recently, just realized comics have brought me all over I've been to
Hmm.
America, all over America. I've been to where like all over Europe. I've been to India, South
Wow.
Africa, Israel, like places I never would have imagined. Like me growing up in the west of
Yeah.
Ireland, like going to any of these places, and it's weird when you look back. Comics has given me so much. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
That is incredible. Wow, that just gave me like a rush of feeling. I've said the same thing about comics, but specifically podcasting has given me the opportunity to like go to a lot of different places. Obviously, meet a lot of really cool people as well. So that's
Yeah,
awesome to
thanks
hear
very
that.
much.
Yeah, you included for sure, present company
Just
included.
assumed.
But Declan, since we're all kind of talking about origin and where you're from, and this is your first time on the show, I feel I feel right in asking this, and that's, do you recall like your first conscious exposure to comics? Like, can you recall that first comic you ever picked up or had that made you a fan of the medium?
I mean, yeah, I can't remember what order they're in, but I do remember reading Asterix. If you're familiar with Asterix, it's like
Isn't
a
that
European comic.
uh, y- maybe for a minute I was mistaken for I immediately thought about the David Mazzucchelli series, but I don't think that's.
No, no, this was
No,
like
actually,
a
I do know
French.
Asterix. Yes, I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
because
yeah.
the
Asterix
main
and Obelisk.
character. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So like you could get those volumes in very easily in the local library, so I was able to
Hmm.
read those. And there were a lot of news agents, kind of newsstand comics. There would be a lot of like Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles and Ducktales, stuff like that. But I was finding an X Force comic in a random news agent in Lahinch, which is a beach town near here, and it was like I just found the Holy Grail, mixed in with like all these, boring objects. Something just popped out, and I ran to my mother to get the money to buy it, and I went back and it was gone, and I was traumatized. So my mum, just to shut me up, managed to find a newsagents in my hometown who could get the X-Men comic, which I just thought there was one X-Men comic,
Hmm.
and just getting that first American one, I think really. I mean, I always drew comics as a kid, and I would have, I would have traced the stuff from the newsagent stuff. But I think I remember the X-Men comic just really hitting this kind of like nerve deep in me that just filled me with excitement, and
Hmm.
I was just really hooked from then on.
Do you recall like who maybe was the artist or what was the cover or maybe even the issue
Yeah, it
number by
was
any chance?
X-Men issue 35, written by, I think it was I actually can't remember who wrote it. Um, I should really know that, but Liam Sharp drew it, and that was weird because to me, like,
Oh.
this is an American comic. Liam Sharp is British, very famous British artist,
Yeah, yeah.
but it was an American comic, so I just
Huh.
assumed everybody was American. I wouldn't have thought that it was anything else. But yeah, it was an
Oh
issue about
wow.
Cyclops and Phoenix,
Yeah,
and Nick
I'm looking at
Fury
the
was in
cover
it.
now.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is a radical cover. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen this suit on Cyclops. Maybe it was just like a product of his time, but yeah, this would definitely
No,
blow my
it
mind.
was specific for that issue because they came back
Hmm.
from the Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, which I didn't know about at the time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they're kind of like with these weird Shield variants that clearly Liam Sharp just drew because he wanted to draw it. Um, but then I remember the very next issue was the Phalanx Covenant Part Two. I was like, what the last issue was what's the Phalanx Covenant? Like I didn't understand that there were crossovers or other X-Men comics until I'd see the
Yeah.
ads for where they were. I'm like, what? What's Uncanny? Like it's weird. Like people talk about how comics need to be more accessible, and that
Hmm.
maybe that's true to some degree. But at the time, they were so inaccessible, especially when I had no access to them. So my mum was very good. She'd like brought me to Dublin for my birthday once, and I found a comic shop, and I just stayed in there, just trying to figure out like with the bit of money my mum gave me what'll I get, and all of a sudden there's this whole other world. So it was incredibly exciting for like a young teenager, um, to find this stuff, and yeah, I clearly just got sucked in.
I love that regardless of where you're at in the world, that I think Declan, there's maybe 5 years apart between us. It's, but I like it's like a recurring thing when it comes to people that are around our age range, around like mid 30s, later 30s, that for us getting into comics, we all kind of shared certain like similar beats where it's like confusion, like what is this, and why doesn't this fit into this story, and this and that, and then like excitement, and like there's always a part where a mom is involved, asking your mom for money,
Sure.
and then going
Yeah.
to the shop and spending all day. It's a very similar origin story. Hearing you get excited and
Well, I mean,
makes me
everything's
think of
changed now. There are no
yeah.
newsstands, and the experience is different. And I've told this story recently, but I remember issue 30, 40. I can't remember which issue it was, but when when Legion Quest and when Legion accidentally kills Xavier, and then Age of
Mm,
Apocalypse
Age of
happened.
Apocalypse, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, my newsagent was ordering X-Men, so there was no X-Men comic. They changed it to Astonishing X-Men, but my newsagent didn't know that, so there was no X-Men comic for one
Oh.
month and then another month, and they just killed Xavier. So I was thinking, like, did I just get into X-Men before they ended it? Like,
Yeah,
I thought it was done, like for ages, and then
yeah.
out of nowhere, it's back. So and there was references to Age of Apocalypse. So I'm like, I don't understand what's the Age of, like. I just
Mhm.
thought for a while there, I thought they just ended X-Men right just like got into it.
Man, that would be such an intense like, and I think Age of Apocalypse ran for maybe almost a
It was like
year, if not a
no,
couple
no, I
of
think it was
like a
only
lot of months.
four or
Okay,
five
4
months
months
maybe.
about,
Hmm.
but
But
that is a
back
long.
then, yeah, I mean, how would I did there was no internet back then.
Yeah,
There's no way to know this stuff, so
Inter-
I just thought that's it.
interesting.
Comics are over.
Yeah, from your perspective, there's a lot of different points in the and like the logistics of it. I'm hearing you say news agent, and that's kind of like your bottleneck, right? Like if the news agent isn't
Hmm.
familiar with American comics and spin-offs and the different titles, and I'm and especially at that time, I think Age of Apocalypse was. I don't think it was like the first of its kind as far as like company-wide crossover, but it was a pretty big deal. So if your
But it
news
was like, I
agent
mean, think
isn't
about it now. It's pretty ballsy move,
for sure, for
at the
sure,
time.
yeah. So
But
very
then
interesting.
I did start like once I got into a comic shop, I found like Wizard magazine, and
Hmm.
I think I might have ordered a subscription to that. So I was learning more about the comics world
Yeah.
and creators and what was happening in books that I wouldn't have had no interest at the time, but I know like crazy stuff is happening with Image, and I did kind of, that was my one kind of, again before the internet, my one kind of access point to like the industry, and
Yep.
you know finding out about other books and DC comics and things like that. But my main entry points were X-Men and Spider-Man, because as well, Panini, who would be very well known now, but at the time they just started publishing older American comics. So
Hmm.
while I was trying, I said the story before, but while I was trying to like follow the end of the Clone Saga with American comics, they started the Clone Saga from 4 years previously in the British
Oh
reprints.
wow.
So I was kind of trying to close the gap on that mental story. But again, like it made
It's
no, like from that experience, you don't know what's happening, but still, I was
yeah.
just so it was so exciting. I loved Mark Bagley's work, and Tom Lyle, and like all the Spider-Man stuff.
Hmm.
So you just have your little crumbs, and you just savor those crumbs, and just hope that it'll make sense in the end. Whereas now, a lot of it's like, oh, I don't know what it is, and just throw it away. I like you
Yeah,
really
yeah.
when you had such limited access, you really, really savored it. I have
Well
no
said.
idea how I kept going with it because it was so inaccessible.
Yeah, well
Who the
said.
hell is Ben Riley?
Now, speaking of family, right? You bring up your mom and getting her to take you to a comic shop. I have a quote here that I heard you say in an interview, and I love this quote, and it ties to the family and the origin, your comic origin. But you mentioned that you knew you made it when you got to attend the Moon Knight premiere in L.A. And you said that you brought your sister, and she made the remark, "Looks like all my bullying finally paid off." So that got me thinking, like, what does your family think of your career in comics? Or like, were they supportive early on when you were like decided, hey, I want to make this a living, I want to do this full time?
Well, my dad fecked off when I was a kid, so I was raised by my mum and I have a younger sister, so I didn't really have any, input in that regard. My mum had a boyfriend who, to be fair to him, he did not understand at all, and I'd
Hmm.
say would be very, very dismissive of it. Like he had very his job was very hard labor. So, he was into like athletics and things like that. So like this kind of weird nerdy kid who's drawing all the time, like what's he at?
Hmm.
But as the years went by, I think you understand it a bit more, to be fair to people, trying to explain, wanting to have a career in comics, it just sounds insane. But my mom was always like, very, very supportive, more supportive than she really needed to be, considering like she was a single mom and everything. And my sister was always supportive. Like she was joking when she said it. She always bullies me, or not bullies me, but she makes a point. She's like, everyone thinks you're really good at drawing, but you've never been able to draw me. Because anytime I've tried to draw on her, she told me to draw her in 28 days later, and I did, and had a very good likeness of her, but I drew her as one of the infected people, so then I drew blood all over her, so it didn't look like her anymore. So that's she maintains
That's
really that,
awesome.
I'm really, I'll have to prove to her that a good drawing of her, and then she'll acknowledge that I'm good at what
That
I
is
do.
such that is such a big sister joke. I've got a big sister, and I
Well,
can
she's
hear her
she's my
saying
little
that.
sister.
Oh, never
Yeah.
mind. That's even funny.
But no, but I mean, she always, yeah, I wouldn't say she was always like, "Oh, you can do it" or anything like that. But drawing was always my thing, and nobody ever, no one in my family ever tried to talk me out of it. And I think I was talking to my mum recently, actually, and she said, when I finally got the Marvel, when I got my contract at Marvel, I put it in an envelope, and when I put it I was in New York at the time, and I put it in the mailbox, and I had a friend take a photo, and I sent it to my mum, just to show her like I did it. You know, that was huge. For me. And I was talking to her actually last week, and she said when she saw that photo, she wasn't proud of me. She was relieved, which makes she just had a huge sense
That's
of relief
hilarious.
because because
Yeah.
of years and years and years of going to conventions and nothing really
Hmm.
coming of it necessarily, and it's a long, long. It was what was I was doing it all my whole life, and I got my first paid gig. I was in my 20s, like 25 maybe, something like that. So it was a long, long road of like trying and trying and trying. But um, I would say the town I grew up in, if you're not playing a certain local sport, nobody cares what you do. Um,
Yeah.
and now that I'm back here years later, people are very, because everyone knows what Marvel is now. Back then, nobody had a clue.
Fair.
Nobody knew who Captain America was or Iron Man or anything like that. So it's weird. Like all of my friends now have kids, and all of their kids love Marvel and stuff like that. So like it's weird how much has changed since.
Hmm.
But you remember the people who supported you when nobody else gave a toss. And there's like a good few friends of mine I went to school with who are like, wow, you always wanted to do this and you're doing it. It's crazy, and it. I mean, you kind of forget how mental it really is to be doing this. When you're in the trenches, you just kind of you're preoccupied with your deadlines and
Yeah.
getting everything done. So it has been a weird kind of um not palate cleanser, but like it's just kind of weird to step back in your old shoes and realize that how things have changed, and what I've
Hmm.
actually managed to do is mad. Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting all
Yeah. No, no,
all
no.
sentimental.
No, as you should. I mean, like you've worked your whole life to do. You've worked your whole life getting to this point, and I think it's safe to say, like, you're one of the best. You're a household name. Like you are a creative force in comics, and like you said, I when you probably have had your head down just doing the work, gig to gig, and then it's nice to maybe like look up and be like, wow, to kind of like take that in.
No,
That can be like a rush of emotions at time.
no, it is. It's. I mean, I think it's actually very important to stop and smell the roses sometimes because I do know a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of creators, and a lot of us can get very in the weeds too much and frustrated, and and understandably so, where your career is, or you're not making enough, your page rate, or you're not getting respect from the publishers, all various stuff. And because not many people around you understand that, we all end up kind of venting to each other, because you understand. You
Hmm.
can't tell like your friend who's a plumber, he doesn't get this, a same, but plumbers know each other. I mean, there's a whole plumber network, right? No, you know what I mean? Like, people who have normal jobs can talk to normal
Yeah.
people about normal stuff. We have weird jobs, and weird people are other sides of the country or the planet. Um, so we talk, but it is good to smell the rose sometimes and realize how fortunate you are to be even. Like, I was talking to another creator recently, and they made the point that like some people just get to do the job, like write or draw comics for a publisher, and
Hmm.
they're lucky. And then there's another level of people who get to do it at, say, Marvel and DC, who just get to work there, which was their dream, and they did it. And then there's people who get to do there and then get kind of the types of projects they'd really like, which I'm there, which is incredible. I'm so
Hmm.
lucky. And then there's another level of people who just get to make their own projects and like make a living off it. And I've even gotten to there. You realize there's so many levels to this stuff where you're lucky and fortunate. And like, I couldn't, I mean, what more could I ask for, I mean,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I could
That's
ask
what.
for lots more, but I
Don't get
realize
too greedy.
I am very, very fortunate to be where I am. I really try not to take that for granted,
No, that's fair, and it's well deserved. On the topic of all this, I want to share something that I think is really applicable at this current moment and what we're talking about. Um, I was looking up YouTube videos and interviews with you, and there was a comment in the comment section for this one Marvel interview video you did. And it caught my eye because I was like, wow, this is kind of personal. I wonder if this guy knows Declan, or maybe, maybe Declan knows this person. But someone by the name of Dante Corwin left a comment on this particular video, and they wrote, Declan had a studio. Now, granted, this video, for maybe to jog your memory, is about 5 years old. But the comment
Okay.
reads, Declan had a studio in my local comic shop about 10 years ago when he was first starting out. It's great to see how his hard work has given him a fantastic career that he loves. And I was like, wow, I wonder, does that bring any memories back? Like, what is this studio? What is this comic shop that you were working out
Uh,
of?
well, just by the way, I'm not sure if the microphone picked up a sound there. I was not peeing. I was just pouring more tea into my cup. I just want to be. I didn't want anyone to go like, "Here's a nice story," and I'm there like urinating at the time. No, no, no. I'm just filling
I didn't
more
even
tea into
think
my
about
cup.
it. I knew it was tea, so I was getting a little thirsty. I was like, wow, that's refreshing. But in
Yeah,
that context,
but
that's
it
pretty
really
weird,
does
man.
sound like I'm going to the toilet. Maybe I will later. Who knows?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I can't. The name doesn't ring a bell, but that's probably a YouTube name. Yeah, when I started out in Ireland, I was going to conventions in the UK,
Hmm.
and then I'd go back to the city. I was living in a nearby city, and I'd work my portfolio and back and forth. And then I had an opportunity to go to Scotland. There was a retailer I knew or had met, and he offered me a studio space underneath
Oh, wow.
his comic book shop. So I went and I set up a studio, like studio. I just had a desk where I was working on graphic novels, and I got to meet people who were buying comics and stuff. I got to read some of the when the shop was closed. I'd go up and I'd read all these books I didn't really have access to. I got to read all of Why the Last Man and Concrete and Losers and just stuff I wouldn't have a chance. Um, but I also met anybody who came through to do a signing at the shop. I met them too. I got to meet David Lloyd and um, it's like so many now I can't even remember. But yeah, so I was doing Frankenstein graphic novel, and I'd started like an Irish small press book at the time. So I spent a year and a half working there, and that was good for me because it got me out of my comfort zone, where I was living. I kind of shut myself off from friends and family, and I just kind of
Hmm.
concentrated on making stuff and trying to get enough money to live. And you know it was a big personal step for me. But it was Asylum Books and Games in Aberdeen, Scotland. And it was also to leave the country was huge for me too. And I found out people thought I was charming just because I have this accent. That was a powerful lesson to learn. But yeah, no, it was really, that was a big moment for me to kind of like make a shift of like making a career out of this, rather than, when you're younger, a lot of people talk like they want to be DJs, or they want to be rappers, or they, well, she tells you about the people I was hanging out with. But
yeah, I was like, well, you're hanging out in New York, New York crowd?
No, it was Limerick. It was Limerick, Ireland. It was not as glamorous as New York. But
like
a lot of people.
Nightlife.
Well, I went to art college, and and I knew a lot of arty people. But a lot of people talk about what they want to do and don't really follow through. And
sure.
I always knew what I wanted to do, and I wanted to follow through. So leaving the comfort of my home was good for me to kind of force me to buckle down and really give it everything, and it paid off. So thank God.
Well, I guess so, Declan. According to your Wikipedia, it said that you made your debut in 2006 with a title called Hero Killers. And from my understanding is that's, I mean, it won an Eagle Award for favorite British black and white comic book. So, I mean, from my perspective, I'm reading that, I'm like, wow, out the gate, he's got an award-winning, comic book to his name. Like, did winning that award, I guess, like, give you the motivation to, like, I mean, like, how did that play into, like, your perspective and your hustle and things like that? I mean, I hear that and I'm like, oh, wow, that's like a really great achievement off the bat. He could have, easily maybe rested on his laurel, but it sounded like, you just continued to grind and do the work.
Yeah,
what do you recall about that?
It sounds very prestigious. I mean, it was great that it happened, but I mean, the reality was I drew a book for free, to get a portfolio, basically, because I'd been going to British shows. I'd show my portfolio. I'd thinking like, this is it. This is where I make it. And then it's like, no, that's not very good. And this is why it's not very good. And you'd be like, oh, son of a. So it was, this whole process of, not being good enough. And, but thankfully, Art College had set me up for that kind of disappointment. But what had happened was I met a writer there, Andy Winter, who basically was doing his own small press books, self-published work. And I showed him my portfolio and he really liked it. And he said, he basically said, look, if you'd be interested, I'd like to write a story for you. I can't afford to pay you, but I will publish the book. So that's what happened. I went back to Limerick and I buckled down for a couple of months and I drew the 30-page one-shot that Andy had written. And yeah, he published it in time for the Bristol, I think it was Brighton maybe the first time it was published. And then he republished it for Bristol or whatever. But anyway, yeah, so it basically won the Small Press Award, black and white British books. It was a Small Press Award, basically. Like, I mean, the Eagles weren't Small Press Awards, but that was the Small Press category, effectively. And yeah, that was really, really cool. I remember Andy had a really heartfelt speech about how the Eagle Awards meant so much to him. And I said something I thought was very funny that nobody laughed at, so that set me up for the rest of my career, pretty much. I said thanks for those who supported me, thanks for the help, and those who didn't, thanks for nothing. And I walked off the stage thinking everybody would laugh, but no, I just seemed like an asshole. But
you haven't been invited back since.
Yeah, exactly. I never won an Eagle after that, but no, it was huge. It was amazing. I didn't think that would happen, but I had a lot of people kind of you could write in basically to nominate. So like, a lot of people supported it and voted for it, and to get the award was really, really cool. It was a great way to start a career, even though, it's not like I literally made no money on it or anything like that. So it's not like it wasn't even my first job because I didn't get paid for it, but it was a great opportunity. I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm not,
Yeah.
Andy was very straight up. And it goes to show you sometimes there is, I'm all for like, you should, look after yourself and make sure you're getting paid, yada, yada. But there are, to do something for exposure is kind of a dirty word in our circles. You know, you see a lot of people going like, "Oh, exposure." Sometimes it is worth it for the exposure. You know, you just need to kind of make a calculated decision about like what are the pros and cons here. I needed a portfolio piece. I had only done samples. I'd never had a published comic. This guy offered me a chance to be published and have a comic made, and then I did it, and I had a comic. That was the first big step for me. So, and then for Twitty Award was great, you know. But then I think that helped me get the next gig, because I think Classical Comics were at the convention, or I had a meeting with them anyway. But I can't remember exactly how it worked. But no, I got a gig drawing another small press comic based in Ireland actually, and then Classical Comics, which was kind of a bigger graphic novel. So I think it definitely helped give my career a jump start from the very beginning. Yeah, like it helped. All that stuff helps. You know, whatever gets you attention as an artist is good, because there's so many tons of people out there. Whatever gets you ahead, you know.
So that was 2006, Hero Killers, and I'm gonna do a huge time jump here in a second to talk about Thundercats. But looking at everything in the middle, which is is an understatement. I mean, you've done quite a lot in your career, and that's actually the understatement right there. I mean, just quickly kind of just spitballing some titles here. 28 Days Later for Boom Studios, Thunderbolt for Marvel, Deadpool, Moon Knight, Injection with Warren Ellis on Image Comics. I mean, just recently, Old Dog, sorry, via Image. I think you are currently doing Alien for Marvel and 20th Century. I feel like I'm missing something major.
It's Time Before Time,
but
just
Time Before Time. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yep. Ended in November of 29 issues. Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thanks very much.
When you think about that giant chunk of career and all these different titles, is there? And I have a feeling I know what the answer will be, but is there one project that you feel when you look back that maybe has a more sentimental weight for you in terms of maybe like making you feel like you made it, or you learned the most, or it was just like a good moment in time and all of that? Like what comes to mind as far as like a sentimental project?
Well, I mean, they all, every one of them, something happened that helped me or figured things out. Starting at Marvel on Thunderbolts was a huge experience, and I learned so much doing that. And then, Northlanders at DC, like every small gig, was a step up and a great experience. And but I mean, I'd have to say Moon Knight was the one that really, like, I was such a huge fan of Warren Ellis's growing up, and I'd read so much of his books, and he was incredible. And he hadn't done comics in a long time, so when Moon Knight came around, that was a huge opportunity. And not only that, but I got to basically own the visual language of the book, whereas I had been a guy, I was on one book at Marvel and then another book at Marvel, and that was great, but I was really itching to kind of step up creatively and really own a title and do a signature piece of work. And Moon Knight did that for me, and then it set me up for Injection with Warren, and I got a lot of respect and kudos from that book, which I think really helped my career in a big way. And I mean, I learned so much in it too. Every bloody issue of that nearly killed me. There was always something so challenging and really pushed me, and I felt like I improved so much in a short space of time. And that's not even mentioning the TV show last year or whenever it came out.
Yeah.
That doesn't even rate, honestly, compared to what it really did for, my actual like hands-on career. Even doing Old Dog recently was me doing an attempt to trying to go back to that kind of, punchy, moody storytelling. Like, so it's definitely like, I feel like it made me at Marvel after a good few years. I think it made me, artists seem to put a lot of stock in it, especially younger artists tell me how much it kind of had an impact. So it's I think in so many ways it really kind of hit all the things I really wanted in a career, and then provided the launch pad for everything else I was able to do afterwards.
I'm thinking to myself, like, man, what was my first conscious exposure to your work? And I think at the time I was really into Thunderbolts. I think I was collecting that series by Jeff Parker. I know you did
Mm.
like two issues, 148 and 149 around 2010. But I think it's definitely safe to say that I think you really put yourself on the map in my mind, or at least in my head canon, with Moon Knight. And if I'm being honest, I want to say that Warren Ellis run was the first time I ever picked up or read like a Moon Knight comic. Obviously, I was very familiar with Moon Knight. Grew up a Marvel kid, read a bunch of comics, but I never went out and just sought out like a Moon Knight comic or series. And I was actually working at the comic shop when that series launched. And I want to say it was part of like the Marvel Now launch. So
Yeah,
it was a
yeah, it
bunch
was.
of
Yeah.
like new number one. Yeah. So, we were in the shop. I was working in the shop, like pushing new books. And it was just a good time to be working in the shop. It was like the Image Renaissance. It was, Marvel Now. So there was a lot of jumping on points that I was recommending to people, but also like being recommended too. And that Moon Knight, I mean, hell, I think we did an episode about that, about your run with Warren Ellis a couple episodes back when the Disney Plus show launched. But I just remember thinking, how even just revisiting it recently, it's gritty. It's smart. It's a very smart comic in my opinion. I think your compositions, your framing, like just your knack for action is something to like be applauded. I wanted to give you those accolades and those flowers now. That it is a series that is burned in my mind when I think of like some of my favorite comic books.
I know. I think I was getting very antsy, like because before that I did Venom and then Deadpool just beforehand, and
Yeah. Hmm.
there were cool books to be. I really liked working on Deadpool specifically, actually. But I was like the third or fourth artist on the run.
Yeah.
So I never really got to. You do your own spin on the character, but it's always heavily based on who was literally just before you or started the
Yeah.
series. Moon Knight was an issue one. It wasn't just like the new run. We got to basically reboot it from the ground up, have new visuals, new costumes. Like so, it was everything. I was just really gagging to do something like that for a while.
Hmm.
So I think there was a lot of pent up creativity. I was waiting to just kind of like get out there.
Yeah.
And I remember working on the book, and I was kind of worried maybe I was going to be too mad. And I kind of stopped myself and said, if I can't go mental on a Warren Ellis book, then when can I? So
Well said.
it
Yeah.
was great. The book gave me permission to really just try stuff. I mean, look, a lot of it was like
Hmm.
Warren's brilliant ideas, but um, I felt like he was basically constructing the ultimate portfolio piece for what I could do and hadn't had the opportunity. Like, clearly, I have an affinity for fight sequences, but I had never really done one like that before. But
Hmm.
Warren gave me the room to do it, or some of the other stuff. Like, I feel like he just made little playgrounds for me and just like went, off you go, do something there, and then the results were what they were. So yeah, I feel like I just unscrewed a certain level of creativity that
Yeah.
I remember once we did that, just being the next guy on another book just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Like just doing a fill-in issue of Wolverine or something didn't have an appeal for me. We basically got to do a creator-owned comic, but the Marvel logo was on it.
Yeah.
And I realized once that had been happened, I'm like, I want more of this,
Yeah.
not less of it. So doing Injection with Warren was the next obvious step. But like now, everything I've kind of done at Marvel, since the closer it is to Moon Knight, the better. Like I don't want to just do a random issue. I
Hmm.
want to I want to I want to build a story and a look and a visual language and take a character and do something cool with them rather than just do a couple of adventures or something. I mean, it's very like wanky of me to assume that's what I should get to do now, but it is what I'm more interested in doing now. I feel like I put my time in the trenches and at Marvel,
Yeah.
and now they know me and they're I've worked with them plenty, so I have a good relationship. So now I'm kind of hoping I can do creator own stuff, and then I can go do work for hire stuff that is
Yeah.
look, for example, Alien. I know I didn't draw it, or actually, wait, I am. I am drawing it right now, some of it, but I like like taking a franchise or a book and doing my take on it. I'm more
Hmm.
interested in that than say just drawing some issues. And if I get to write and draw them, all the better too. So that's kind of where I am in my career, where I feel like um it's more interesting to me. It's more rewarding to me, and
Hmm.
I also opens the door to work with other people, which I love. But Moon Knight is the one that kind of I feel opened those doors for me.
Hmm. That's
Yeah,
fair.
sorry, I'm
And
blabbing now.
no, please. I'm. This is all fascinating stuff. I did want to say, for lack of better terms, when you mentioned, you feel like you've kind of got that clout and the weight to get these projects. I wanted to say, look, you're Declan MF and Shelvey, all right? For lack of better terms, all right. You can demand certain things,
I
but
don't know, but like you said, it was a household name. It must be a very small house with 3 dorks. Yeah, I don't
sounds
know what
like,
that
well,
house
that
is,
is
but
literally
it's
my house.
okay.
It's over here in Jacksonville, Florida, right? It's the Milligan residence. But Declan, really quick, one last question about Moon Knight, because I'd feel a little remiss not asking this, and just for clarity for anyone listening that maybe this is going over their heads, but it's safe to say that you and Warren Ellis are essentially the creators of the Mr. Knight persona of Moon Knight, which we got to
Yeah.
see not a lot of, but we did get to see him in the in the Moon Knight Disney Plus series as portrayed by Oscar Isaac, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is okay.
Yeah, no. It comes up a few times. Michael Lark drew Moon Knight in a suit in an issue of Secret Avengers that Warren wrote. But when we were doing Moon Knight afterwards, like that, we created the character of Mr. Knight. I mean, Warren wanted him in a suit, and we did some variations on it. But what we went with was like that character is from that series. So that
Got it.
although I mean, what they did in the show wasn't very. That was my sister thought. She's like, "Is he a dork in your comic?" I'm like, "No, he's really badass."
he's a badass. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like so. But like to see that visual in real life was like like I said, compared to what it did for me, what the book did for me, I really don't care about the series. Like, to be honest,
fair,
but
fair enough.
It was pretty cool that it happened, and it's pretty cool to have made something that like has entered the pop culture. Having figures made from it and stuff like that. Like, I mean, it is cool. Like, I do appreciate it. But like. I just feel like that's like winning the lottery, and you can't plan for that, and you can't, I took as much, I really pushed the hell out of Old Dog when that show was coming out. I'm like, this is a nice opportunity.
Strike while iron's hot.
Yeah, exactly. So I appreciate any opportunities that come my way, but to me the book is the book, and I enjoyed the series for what it was, but it's not going to change my life or anything,
Yeah, and I respect hearing that actually a lot. Hearing that your bread and butter being comic books and that series having such a big impact. It's cool that it isn't like the opposite, which could have easily been the case, right? Well, actually, probably not, because I've heard all of the horror stories when it comes to all of that live adaptation. But it's cool that your bread and butter and that series in particular, which let's be real, at the time, as acclaimed as it was, for the most part, was kind of like a fringe series, at least in the shop I worked at. Like, it was only a handful of people that were reading Moon Knight, but if you were reading Moon Knight, you knew what was up with it.
Yeah, it was cool to be doing the, like, it wasn't an indie book. It was Warren fucking Ellis writing it, so it had definitely had cachet, but it was like, I kept hearing about, like, creators trying to get a look at the PDF before it came out, like, I think I heard
cool.
Hickman was looking to read it first, and, as a guy who was just coming up as an artist... Cool. You're like, oh wow, like all these people want to read. And I know it wasn't for me; it was for Warren. But I think everyone was excited about what Warren was going to do, and we did something. It was like a cult book, but it sold really, really well. Like it wasn't like just a cult that nobody read it. But it wasn't Spider-Man. But because it wasn't Spider-Man, we could go weird, and because we went weird, people got something out of it. So there was something really cool about doing the weird book that everybody appreciated more because it was doing something different. And again, I think that was definitely beneficial to me, because people, I think people bought the book for Warren, and then they kind of came out of it going like, oh, this Shalvey guy is pretty cool. Again, it just helped me hugely. And yeah, like it's cool to do the weird book, so if you can, because the main, I'm trying to think, like I did Return of Wolverine at Marvel, which is a big book, but like no one really ever kind of mentions it to me. It's always Moon Knight still to this day, which I think shows how like doing a bigger book doesn't necessarily equate like huge success. Not the Moon Knight was a small little book or anything, but in the scheme of things, it was definitely a bit of a wild swing, you know. But again, those projects tend to be the ones that really, really kind of work for you, you know.
How often do people bring up, like fans and colleagues and other creators? How often do they bring up your covers? Because that is one thing about your career that I'll say in a positive light is that you're one of these guys that has. It feels like you've drawn basically every single character in the Marvel universe, and a majority of that being like via covers. Like I forgot I think it was like the Punisher. There's like a Punisher run where you drew every single cover, and it's well into like 15, 20 issues of this particular series. And I guess it's like the Mandela effect. There's a lot of titles that I think of associate your name with, but then I'm like, oh, he just did the covers, but the covers are so damn good. He might as well have drawn the inside. Like how often does that happen to you where someone is just like, yo, your cover is this and that?
That was a bit of a problem because I really loved working on those covers, but then I ended up doing a Punisher series later that didn't get published. And for the covers, I was stressed out because I'm like, I really did the best Punisher covers I could do, and I have no idea how to do Punisher covers for my own book now. How do I make? Because I want to do better ones for me. So I had a whole problem there. But no, I mean, the cool thing about covers is you do get to draw characters you don't normally get to do. Like I've drawn Spider-Man in a comic twice, like in 2 panels out of like 12 years I've been at Marvel, 13 years I've been at Marvel. And I've drawn him maybe 5 times on a cover. So, there's some you just don't get to really touch that much. I drew Blade at Blade cover recently. That's the first time I ever really drew him. Maybe second time. So, like, even though with covers you do get to touch a lot of characters you don't really get anywhere near otherwise, there's still blind spots, But no, that is also really exciting because sometimes you'll do I'll do like a designy cover or a story cover or a kind of a pin-up cover. Depends. It depends on the brief, whether it's a variant or it's those Punisher covers were story covers, had a certain approach to them, and it would depend on what happens in the story. Other covers will be basically pin-ups where it's not story related at all. Some are more design, but I get to play around a lot with covers of Marvel. I've actually I counted them there before the end of the year, and I'm on like 260 now, something like that.
Wow.
Covers of Marvel, which I didn't like. There was a while there where I couldn't get any. I just couldn't get on covers of Marvel, and now I've done this much. It's a little bit mental, but I guess people like them. Otherwise, they would stop asking, I guess.
All right, real quick, before we talk, I promise we're going to be talking about Thundercats, people. I promise. I got one question in that regard. So, 260 plus covers. When you knee-jerk reaction, when you think of like some of your favorite or best covers at Marvel, what immediately come to mind without much thinking?
There was one Wolverine cover I did years ago where he's sitting under a cherry blossom tree, which the tree itself was a lot of work, but he's only really that size in the cover. Sometimes you want the character to be taking up all the image, but I went the other way with it, and I wouldn't say it's the most complex cover I've ever done, but I'd say that one really stands out. That one, I think a lot of people really like that one. The Moon Knight one, which is just 2 eyes and the was the easiest fucking cover I've ever in my life. But I think the only reason that even happened was because Warren said that's the one. Simple. I don't think that would have happened either, but because it was a ballsy move, I just thought this isn't much work technically, but I think it's the strongest image. I think sometimes it's the ones where it's not necessary. Sometimes it's like I get to I drew a Banshee cover a few years ago where it's just a pin-up shot really, and I drew the Cliffs of Moher behind him, which is where I'm from, near where I'm from. That was just like childhood box ticking, pure fan satisfaction. So that's really cool. Those moments are really cool.
Yeah.
But I think it's the ones where you're like, I'd like to just try something weird and different here, and it clicks. Those are I think ultimately the more satisfying ones, even though there may not have been like a lot. They may not be the most technically skilled covers. sometimes those are the ones that really hit, and I do try and think outside the box as much as I can. But also just, doing that all the time can be just as redundant as doing a straight up, like
Hmm.
a lot of my covers will be like the character in the middle, right set in the middle. And I realize that's kind of like a bit of a cover trope of mine. Um, but I'm also aware of it, so I try and not do that sometimes. But sometimes it's just the best, like I did the Darth Vader cover there last year, black, white, and red, and it was it's just him standing on the snow and clouds above him, and there's an element of illustration with the clouds that took a lot of work, but he's fairly small in it, and it's just a powerful composition, and there's a nice mix of technique and composition there. Those are, I think, the covers I like the most.
Yeah, I would describe you in those words: out of the box and technical. It's like a beautiful amalgam of like designy, but also like solid foundation. And I feel like it's, I was looking through all of the Punisher covers, and one right now that just have not stopped thinking about, and maybe because it's ties into all this dentist crap I've been having to deal with.
Oh,
there's a really
yeah.
cool Punisher. Yeah, like a cover where it's like his teeth, but one of his front teeth is like an all black, the skull logo, and I'm like, man, Declan doesn't have the same two. It doesn't have the same two covers, or none of the covers have like the same feeling. Now, granted, from your perspective, you're able to hone in on like you said, certain tropes, but I think your covers are. Yeah, I guess there's a reason why I associate you with so many characters or titles. Even though yeah, with all due respect, you've just done the covers. It's like some of those covers are so ingrained in my head, or have left such an impact and impression on me.
Look, man, that's
So
what I
yeah,
want. Like
it's
as
been
a
great.
cover artist, it's my job literally, like you to judge it by you judge the book by its cover. You literally
Mhm.
do that. If I get
Yeah.
to be a series cover artist, I like to have a certain approach. Like those
Yeah.
Punisher covers where the skull has to be on there, and ideally
Mhm.
not actually show the Punisher. Like hide him as much as I can. Have the skull
Wow, I didn't even
be
think.
the identifying thing. And
Yeah.
there be a story element. So
Mhm.
I would read the story synopsis and try find a visual to kind of glom onto and come up with a way of having the skull in there. So that was basically my ethos with those covers.
That's cool.
If it's just a variant cover, I'd probably just do a pin-up shot or something kind of more designy. But even those covers, Punisher covers, were fairly, the compositions were, I would try and make them bold.
Yeah.
I don't get to do too many series covers, but if I do, I try have a certain, um, like I don't know if you ever read Dead Man Logan, Ed Brisson and
Yeah.
Mike
Yeah.
Anderson. I don't remember those
Mhm.
covers, but they had like the logo on the side,
Yep.
and the illustration would be limited, and it would just be 3 colors, and that was my thing with that. I'm like, okay, the blood will run down the logo more every issue, and the cover will be specific to the story, but I'm going to keep it down to 3 colors. So when you walk in, you'll recognize the Dead Man Logan cover every time it's on the stand, but you'll notice it's not the last one because it's different. Same with Moon Knight. Moon Knight, like half the image was the logo, and the rest of it was just drawing. But so I want you to walk in and you will recognize the Moon Knight cover right there because it stands out, but it's different enough where you don't think it's the previous issue. That can
Hmm.
be kind of hard if you have a very, very heavy visual identity for the covers. You don't like. I don't want to say who, but there was one fantastic creator had a book out at Image, and I loved the design sense. It was very designy, but I could never tell which issue it was because it just always kind of looked like the same one. So
Hmm.
I think you can kind of lose people that way too. But yeah, but generally I do variant covers. Like something pops up, it's like Deadpool or what I do. I did Deadpool last month, and I did what's the other cover I did? I can't even remember. I did it like 2 weeks ago. I can't even remember what I did it.
Too many books, man.
Yeah, that's it. Like I do about 2 covers a month, probably for Marvel, maybe 3 in a good month.
Hmm.
What the hell? Oh, Blade. I did a Blade cover. Yeah, a Blade cover and a Deadpool cover in the same month, and they're both very different from each other. Um,
Hmm.
uh, but they're both variants, so they're not really story related. I do like doing
Yeah.
series covers because I get to kind of have a come up with a kind of a stronger visual identity. I like doing that if I can, but anyway, yeah, sorry, you just wind me
No,
up, man, and I'll just
oh,
keep talking.
oh, good. It's all fascinating stuff. How about we go ahead and pivot to talking about Thundercats, which issue 1 hits shops February 7th. So if you haven't already asked your local comic shop to add it to your pull list, go ahead and get to doing that as soon as you can. Well, actually, by the time this episode comes out, it'll be a week before issue 1 hits shops. So,
Oh, really? Yeah,
hopefully you've
FOC
already done that.
yeah, FOC Pat was yesterday, but from
Yeah.
what I hear, there's a lot of orders, so I'd say you'd probably be able to get one. But I say this is somebody who does their own books too. Do tell your local retailer, otherwise they can't read your mind, and then you're going to come in looking for Thundercats
For sure.
and they're going to be like, "What? Well, you didn't say you wanted Thundercats, and I don't have
And
any
we
copies
sold
of
out,
it."
yeah.
And they're like, "No, I'm just kidding. I've got 3 covers here. Which one do you want?"
I like the way that story ended. All right. Well, I guess the very obvious question here, Declan, is how did you land the opportunity to write Thundercats, and how long has that been in the making, and how'd you get paired with the artist Drew Moss?
I wish it was a very interesting story, but I was at a small comic convention in Cork where I met up with a lot of the Irish lads who I hadn't seen in ages, and I got very drunk. And I went back to my hotel and I had an email from Nate Cosby asking if I had interest in joining the Thundercats. And I just went, "Ruh!" and emailed, and then the next morning woke up and I was like, "Did that happen?" And yeah, I looked at my email and I had accepted the offer. No, I know Nate a long time. Nate was working at Marvel when I was breaking in, so I got to know him at the time. They left Marvel.
And really quick, Declan, just for really quick, just just for anyone that might not know, Nate Cosby is editor at Dynamite.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So he's been
Okay.
He did a lot of the Bond books and loads of projects. I think all the Gargoyles and DuckTales, and he's been doing a lot of stuff at Dynamite now for a good while. But when I met him, he was an editor at Marvel, so I just know him a long time.
Okay.
He a few years ago, it was a one shot, and he's asked I do the odd cover for him here and there, but and he asked me to work on Dynamite. But I mean, I wasn't really expecting anything, and I certainly wasn't expecting that email. I love Marvel were doing them, and I think I was in college when the Wildstorm comics came out, so I didn't even know they had done them as comics. So when it popped up, I'm like, this would be a cool gig. So I took it, and I think the license had just opened up, so basically it was like, we need to start now. And so Drew came on very fast, and I was a fan of Drew's stuff for years. I actually drew a variant cover for his Image series Copperhead. That's the first time I saw his stuff, and I really, really liked it.
Oh yeah.
And weirdly, we just never talked. I don't know how. We know a lot of the same people, and we just never had any communication. But I really, really liked his stuff, and it turned out he liked my stuff too, which is nice because I wouldn't like it if we didn't. But yeah, so we just hit it off straight away, and he's just banging out these fantastic pages, and it's fun because I mean, I'm trying to write stuff that where there's image. Like I was writing a scene today, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be cool. I'd like to draw that, but I'm not going to draw it. He's going to draw it. But I always feel like if there's moments where I feel like I'd like to draw it, that's going to be good for Drew. I mean, and it worked out. I mean, you've seen some of the preview pages. The scene, there's a page where he goes thunder, 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 and then the next page.
Oh man, yeah.
Like I remember I was writing that. I'm like, oh, I want to give a page for the thunder, thunder, thunder. You could do it. You could do it as 3 small panels on another page where lots of stuff is happening. But I'm like, no. If I haven't read if I want to read a Thundercat story and I haven't seen one in years, I want that build up. It's coming.
Yeah. Punch him in the face with it. Yeah.
I'm like, no, this is going to be. I know I'd love to draw this page, and then when Drew drew it, it was, and he, so the sword kind of pops out, which is really nice. I liked that a lot. And then the whole like, it's nice. I feel like the electricity is going through the script and into Drew and out through the page. It's been a really cool collaboration. I have to say, I really enjoyed. Like I like my art dark and mysterious, and Drew can do moody without it being drab or like
Hmm.
it's not. There's definitely a darker tone to this Thundercats, but it's not like a grim and gritty Thundercats. So he does the big kind of superhero shots, and he does the great moody Black Pyramid
Hmm.
location. Oh no, it's great. But I think Drew had just done a Gargoyle series for Nate at Dynamite, so I think they've worked together loads, which is why. So it was Nate's idea for Drew, and I just like
Hmm.
straight away I was like, yeah, he'd be great, and that was it.
I'm glad you brought up the collaborative nature of comic books because I got a question here regarding how you worked with Drew Moss specifically. Like, obviously, you come from an artistic background. You're, no slouch and no stranger to drawing comics, whether it be interior or covers. And I imagine it makes it, easy for you to speak the language to him and, be able to share notes and things like that. But did you guys develop any like shortcuts or tricks in the process? Or, I guess what was the difficulty like working on this series? On a scale of like 1 to 10, 10 being extremely hard.
One, I'd say, and we just kind of it's weird. I did think we did an interview before we properly started working on the book because the
Hmm.
turnaround again was quite fast. We had to really jump on it, and I think someone said, like, "What's it like working with Drew?" And we literally hadn't, I was writing the script, but he hadn't started drawing it yet. But we just had a little bit of back and forth, and I just felt we were on the right track from the very beginning. You never know when you're working with somebody new how it's going to go, but I think, I mean, I don't want to speak for Drew, but I think he feels respected
Hmm.
and appreciated, and that any input I have with the work that he's doing helps him helps make it better. I'm not one to give
Hmm.
mad notes all the time, but like if I have one or I might like would have one or two here, be like maybe this panel could be a bit longer or tiny little things like that. And his response has always been like, "Oh wow, yeah, that's great. It is better. Thank you." Not like I don't want to be like I wouldn't want someone to be breathing down my neck. And I think I was talking to Andrea before. He said he was worried about working with me because he thinks that a lot of writer artists
Hmm.
can be very demanding. And I don't want to be that guy. I definitely would have like things in mind or ideas. But I think I learned from working with Warren even that, like he said, if he had something specific he wanted, he would write it down and he would hope that I would do that. But otherwise, I was free to kind of mess around. So I think I've really kind of had that approach too, where I'm going for something specific, I'm going to ask, but otherwise, whatever you want to bring is cool. And I think there's not much point being working in a collaborative medium if you don't take good ideas that are on the table. Like if a colorist has something you didn't have in mind but is really cool, then you're like, yeah, go with it because you'll get credit for that good idea generally, you know. Um, so no, so I from the beginning I basically was open. I want this to be a book that
Hmm.
really puts Drew on the map. I want because he's been around a long time and he's done some great work. I think he should be a superstar. So I'm hoping, and I think it will. Um, a big book like this, seeing what Drew can really do, push him to do like he's great at character acting, he's great at action, he's great at moody shots. He's a really good storyteller. And we need more of those in the industry. And I'm trying to just set him up for the
Hmm.
best success he can have. Um, uh, and I just felt like I think we just had a very good groove from the beginning. There's been no, yeah, I would say it's been zero actually. There's zero is the difficulties. It's actually been
That's
very,
awesome.
very smooth, which is great because, like I said, when you work with somebody new, you've no idea. They could be total wankers or they could be real prima donnas, and I want to be the
Yeah.
wanker and prima donna in this in this relationship.
That's awesome. And something you said that and hopefully I'm not repeating myself because the internet connection was dropping, but Something you said that kind of perked my interest and made me excited is it sounds like you've got a year's worth of stories so far. So is it safe to assume that this will be a long form comic? It's is it going to go on for a while?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, this
There we
book
go.
is
There we go.
ongoing. I think Dynamite said this is
Cool.
ongoing. I haven't planned past a year, so I don't know if Dynamite will be sick of me in a year and want somebody else, or if they'd have
Got it.
to have me keep going. Honestly, I've never come onto a book as a writer in this scenario before. Everything's
Yeah.
always been limited, so I pitched basically a year long story, like about 12 to 15 issues. It'll be, yeah,
Oh
15
wow.
issues. Is what I had planned. So I guess it'll depend how the series goes. If the series, I mean, I know that the orders are over 100,000 or something. Like,
That's
holy
awesome.
crap! I doubt issue two will be that, but if it keeps doing well, I'm sure. I would imagine the book is
Yeah.
just going to keep going. I don't know if they'll keep me, but I at least do know that I have a whole year worth. Like, I have the end of a year. Basically, the end of the year will be a
Yeah.
climax story wise, um, with others along the way. But it's nice. It's been really exciting to be able to plan something more long term than with a lot of other books. You start it and then you finish it within 5 or 6 issues. So this is actually really liberating. It's really fun
Is it safe to
to
say
work on.
that time after time, which you did through Image, like we said in the beginning, it just ended in November of issue 29. Is it safe to say that is like the longest, ongoing series that you've ever done? Do you prefer
Yeah,
and do
I'd
you
say.
prefer the and do
Sorry,
you
go on.
prefer like the long form ongoing, or do you have like a sweet spot? Like 6 issues is my sweet spot, or what do you think?
I mean, I don't have a preference. I think as long as you
Hmm.
get to do both. I think the problem is if everything's 5 issues, then it's very limiting story wise. Time Before Time was a really cool idea that I know I felt like if we only got one arc, it would be like, a real shame to
Hmm.
not be able to kind of dig into it more. I knew the idea had legs. Me and Rory definitely had ideas to go past the first arc, but like, especially with creator owned, you can't really plan past the first arc because you don't know if the book will survive 5 issues before the first issue
Hmm.
even comes out. Like, I mean, it's really the sales on issue one make you go, could we last past this? And more issue two is more reflective than anything else. So we planned it so that if we have to wrap it in issue five, then okay, it'll really suck. But thankfully, it launched pretty well, so we had more room, and then we got to the second arc, and the sales were, going down as they do, but not too dramatically. So we were basically able to land the plane at issue 29 before the wheels came off, basically.
Look, and
But that was an attempt by me to do
hmm,
something more long term because, like, as an artist, I think I probably did like 2 years worth of issues
hmm.
on Thunderbolts. Venom maybe 10. Deadpool was 5. Moon Knight was 6. Everything. Injection was probably the longest. I did 15 issues of that. Um, but as a writer, I really wanted to do something. I did a couple of Irish graphic novels. They're all like
Hmm.
100-ish pages, which I loved. But I wanted to do something that was more long form. So that's what I wanted Time for Time to be. Because nothing at Marvel I'd gotten really at that stage. It was miniseries I'd gotten to do, or if the job offers weren't coming for something more long form, I wanted to write something more long form. So that's what Time for Time was supposed to be, and it ended up doing that, which was great. Alien was nice because I knew I had 10 issues going in, so that
Hmm.
was another opportunity, which is great. Getting to do this with Thundercats now is also great. Old Dog, I want the first arc is 6 issues, but it's definitely going to go longer. I just that was the first book where I've done everything on it, so I really just had to see if I could get to the end of 6 issues and see if I could actually see if the book would survive. So I know what I'm going to do with that. I have a plan for that, but that's I'd say like 3 arcs maybe in total. I don't want that to
Hmm.
go on forever. But I think a book like Thundercats could easily go
Oh
on. There's
yeah.
so much of mythology there to use. I think that book could be a real mainstream hit where you actually get to do long form stories. Because even at Marvel, not a lot of books maybe Amazing Spider-Man, Uncanny, like the big books will last, so you
Hmm.
can tell a longer story. But I also love nice tight little miniseries too. I just don't want to do
Yeah.
only one thing. I'd like variety is the spice of life. If I was only doing like short arcs, I'd get
Mm.
really frustrated. I think if I was only doing long form stories, I'd get really kind of bogged down and frustrated. So as long as I get to do both, I'm not going to do an ongoing monthly book where I draw it all. I just can't do that. I need more hands to do that. But I can write one. So creatively, that's quite satisfying. So I'm in a nice place where I get to do something short, something middle, something long. I'm very
Just
content with
right.
that.
I want to go back to the pre-orders. At the time of this recording, over 100,000, which is no small feat. That is awesome. And it got me thinking how last episode or the last full episode I did was an end of year kind of look back at the year of 2023 in comic books with my local comic shop owner, who's also the sponsor of the show, Ben Kingsbury. And we got to talking about some of the best books that came out, and Transformers came up a bunch, and that led us down a conversation about some of these IP comics, Transformers, TMNT, and now Thundercats. And when we got to the topic of when we got to the topic of comics coming out in 2024 that he was most excited for, or he thought was going to be kind of a blockbuster hits, Thundercats was brought up. And he went on and he had like glowing praise about it. So when I told him that, hey, I'm interviewing Declan Shalvey today, he was really excited, and he submitted a voicemail and a question for you that I think is applicable, considering we're talking about Thundercats and the success and then the hype so far. So I want to play this for you, Declan. Here we go.
Hey, Declan, Ben K, Gotham City Limit, Jacksonville, Florida here. Thanks so much for being here. I've got a two-part question for you, but before I jump into that, I just wanted to say congratulations on the overwhelming FOC ordering success of Thundercats #1. It's been by far one of the most talked about series coming out in 2024 in my shop and on our social media platforms. And I speak for everyone here in Jacksonville when we say we can't wait. Jumping into the comic itself, there are a ton of variant covers, including that awesome C cover you did yourself. What was your inspiration behind that cover? And then secondly, besides yours, out of the remaining variant covers for Thundercats #1, foils and all, which one are you most looking forward to adding to your personal collection? Well, I'm Ben K, representing Gotham City Limit, Jacksonville, Florida, and I'll leave you to answer here. Remember, Shortbox Nation, to always take it to the limit.
Big shout outs to Ben. That was a really good question.
Nice, but I like his energy. That's great. I mean, man, like his readers must, or his customers must really like coming to the shop to
Declan,
get that
I can
energy.
almost guarantee you, of those 100,000 pre-orders, at least 90,000 of them came from Ben alone. He is the ultimate comic salesman. I'm telling you.
Well, that's great. Well, in that case, I would ask Ben that those who are coming in for Thundercats to let them know about Old Dog Volume 1, which is out now. Sorry, I just had to get that plug in there because that's my baby from last year. Like I wrote it, drew it, colored it, everything.
Oh, yeah.
So and it's only $10. So it's not it's just Thundercats and Old Dog right underneath it for $10. You can't really go wrong.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. And it's always great hearing like that kind of excitement from retailers. Is great. I know a lot of retailers. A lot of them are lovely. A lot of them are narky bollockses who just love to complain, for good and bad reasons. But no, it's always great here, and I don't know. I think a retailer has that kind of level of excitement. I think it goes downstream. You need that, which is great. So thanks, Ben. Sorry. So his question was, sorry, the second question was which was my favorite. What was
the first question was what was the inspiration behind your cover, which is the C cover?
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, I would say necessity is the mother of all invention. Sometimes you just have to run with what you've got. Nate offered me Thundercats to write. I said yes. He said, "Do you want to do covers?" I'm like, cool. It's like, all right, I need one next week, pretty much. So I had to turn around, but we hadn't done any. I hadn't figured out what I'm doing yet. We didn't even have an artist. to do I think there was talk of me doing the redesigns, but I just really didn't have time because I was, working on everything else. And I figured it would be better for the series artists to do the designs because they're the ones actually have to draw. Excuse me, sorry. They're the ones who actually have to draw them. So what pet peeve of mine is you see people do designs for a comic and they don't have to draw it, so they'll do crazy complicated costume design, and the guy who's to draw the bloody thing is there like, wants to kill themselves. But where's it going with that? Yeah, so I knew I had to draw a cover, and I didn't know what the character was going to look like yet, but I knew roughly what he would look like. And I was also trying to think what's the most iconic image I could think of when it's Punisher, skull. If it's Shield, it's the Shield logo. Like, so what is the thing that'll grab you with Thundercats? Well, it's the Thundercat logo, which is one of the best logos ever made. Like, that thing I think that makes the cartoon half the time. That Thundercat icon is incredible. So, okay, that's a strong image. It's right on the sword. What else does the sword do? Sight beyond sight. I'm like, okay, I could kind of draw Lion-O without drawing Lion-O and have that icon right in the middle. So basically, yeah, that's what I worked out. I worked out an image where I can kind of show Lion-O, but like clearly like draw the hell out of the sword, make that clear, and wash out the color in the red from the sight beyond sight, and that'll give us breathing room to actually figure out what everything's going to look like afterwards. That's why the second cover is like, I drew them all properly in all their costumes, looking cool and moody, because we knew what they looked like by then. But originally, Nate needed a cover for the announcement in time for New York Comic Con, which was like 2 weeks away. So on top of everything else, I was already very busy. I had to come up with a kind of like an outline pitch for Warner Brothers and draw that cover. So yeah, so I needed to do it fast. So I had to come up with something that would grab your attention and wouldn't be. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like it was fast cover to do, but it wasn't as complicated as issue 2. You can see how complicated that is. So that's my honest answer for how that first cover came around.
That is
all the other covers.
That is such a good, and like it's like, wait a minute, you kind of, for lack of better terms, you spit this out and it's like it hits all the right beats for what you want out of a Thundercat, especially like being a first issue like reintroduction. It's like, why not hit them with like the most iconic image? I could actually,
well, like I said, like necessity is the mother of all invention. Yeah. If I had more time, I might have done something more complicated that was far less impactful.
I love how clean it is. Yeah.
Like it's like if I had more time, I might have done a worse cover. Just because something needs to be done fast doesn't mean it's going to necessarily be better. It forced me to be like, what is the most powerful, iconic thing I could come up with? Like issue 2 Thundercats cover, I personally really like because it's more technically developed. I just feel like it came out exactly how I wanted to, and I really gave it loads of time to make it look really nice. I really like the third one. It's sitting right here, but you can't see it. Because I'm a tease. But, that's the payoff. But I just felt, the first, like, look, Moon Knight. Moon Knight actually is a kind of a similar cover. It's the eyes. It's the logo on the thing. I find those covers are, and also it's a little mysterious too, because it was for the announcement. So I think it was enough of a tease of an image to get you excited without the delivery of everything. I think that can work really well too. So, it had to be done really fast. And I did it. It still took me a good bit of time, but it was more economical than other covers could be. But I think actually, if I had to pick what would be the first cover, I think it would be that. Because it was that I think Luke. What's his Lucas Perello? I can't remember his name. I think there was one of
Lucio Perello. I think I'm saying
that's it. Yeah, his cover was done, but if you notice, his cover is classic Lion-O. It's not the redesign. So that was done in time for the announcement too. But I didn't want to draw. I wanted to draw Drew's one, because I feel it's important that that's what we see. And so sorry. So that's the first one. Sorry, Ben. That's a very long-winded answer, but it's the truth. Whereas what are my favorite ones? I was looking at all of them there the other day. The Jay Lee one is. I really like the Jay Lee
That was
one.
mine.
That's really cool.
You can't go wrong with it.
When I saw that,
Yeah,
I'm
you
like,
can't go wrong with a Jay Lee cover. You know, like
yeah, that one especially though. That I've always liked Jay Lee stuff, but that cover really that made me go, man, I got to do a really good team cover. That I think that's the reason why I put so much into the second cover, because that one really got me. What else? I'm trying to think of the other ones.
So you've got
For the first issue one,
so
actually.
you've got, as far as like other variant covers for issue 1, you've got David Nakayama, Lucia Perello, Jay Lee, June Chung, and then Ivan Tao.
Yeah, I mean, I love the David Nakayama one as well. That's lovely,
Yeah.
actually. I
Very
remember
clean.
because he had more time than I did for that first cover. Not that that means I could do as well as good as him. I'm just trying to explain why his is a very clear shot of the whole team. But I love that one, especially because it's the first image we saw of Drew's designs for the cover. That came in before Jay's, so I really like that one. I think it's fantastic. But I've seen all the covers. Nate sent me all the covers yesterday. There's a Savage Mahmoud Asrar one.
Oh, wow.
There's a Frank Cho one that looks great.
Oh,
I think they're all retailer covers, but there's some
Yeah.
really cool ones. It's actually hard to pick them up. I'm trying to stick with issue 1 now, because it's some great ones. But I think probably, yeah, the David one or the Jay Lee one. Or maybe mine without the logo, because they're doing those as well. They're doing
Yeah,
the Virgin ones.
covers, yeah.
Actually, I do quite like Virgin covers. I like seeing the art with no title at all. I always get a kick out of those. Or my black and white one. So, there's those to choose from.
You sound like that Dave Chappelle skit. Who's your top 5 favorite rappers? Dylon. In this case, Declan.
yeah.
No, all solid choices.
You're too close.
Yeah, you're too close, man. Okay, so you kind of you tease issue 3, the cover, which I don't think they've got the solicitations or any of the preview images for anything past.
Actually, there must be very soon. We're recording on the 17th, so I imagine the
yeah, probably by the time this episode drops.
Look, I'll show you. I'll show you.
Ooh.
All right, because by the time this comes out, I'm sure we.
Oh my God! You got the I'm just gonna call it the Thundercats vehicle. I always forget the name of the vehicle. That is a bad.
It's that Thunder Tank.
Thunder Tank. Oh my God! And with the icon in the back. All right, audio listeners. Obviously, this is a visual moment of the podcast. If you're watching the video version, you're seeing this. But more than likely, this cover will be available to view by the time this episode comes out. That looks amazing, Declan. My question.
Yeah, you can see Lino on the top there. And
yeah. Oh, that's sick. Yeah, that's pretty badass. I went on your Twitter on your Twitter account yesterday, and for a minute, I was like, oh, I think I found the wrong account. This must be like a Thundercats fan page, because it was all like your profile picture is the Thundercats logo. You got the banner, and I had a good chuckle about it. But I was like, man, this speaks to like his passion for the project. I love seeing when a creator just gets all into it, like just from like the marketing side, right? Like the small things you could do as a creator to build hype and show like, hey, this isn't just a gig to me. Like, I really want this to succeed. So that was really pleasant.
Well, I mean, I'm used to that with the creator-owned stuff, man. I mean, Old Dog came out the end of 2022. And the trade came out September last year, so that for all that time, my icon was issue 1 cover, and I had made a banner on Twitter. Like, I think little things like that really help, especially with creator-owned stuff. Every little helps. Yeah. But to be fair to Dynamite, they actually made those little banners, sent them to us a while ago. But I hadn't gone all in yet because nobody had seen any of Drew's pages yet. It's all been variant covers. And I'm still pushing Old Dog, as much as I can. But the book is out in a month. FOC was coming up, and then they released Drew's pages. I was like, okay, I'm shifting focus now from Old Dog to like Thundercats is a work for hire gig, so it's not the most important thing to me, it's not everything I'm doing that's Old Dog. But like, this is a really cool, fun book.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like it to launch well so I can keep working on it. So I'm going to focus on Thundercats for the next while, and then when the next book comes out, I'll shift to that. But I mean, now's the time to get all in on the book,
For sure.
And it weirdly, with the announcement of the sales numbers or the order numbers, and Drew's pages. I was talking to Drew over the weekend, and I said, like, it feels like there was definitely excitement for the book, but then once that news came in about the orders, and then Drew's pages came out, I just feel like the excitement really, I didn't. What Ben was saying there with the excitement from readers, I haven't felt that because I'm not in. I'm in Ireland and working in my room.
Yeah.
You can only go by online, so I didn't really feel it, but I really started feeling it from Friday. I'm like, okay, great, this is really cool. People are excited. I'm going to run with it. So yeah, so I'm all in to push the book and focus my energies into that. Alien is wrapping up. When I do the next Old Dog, I'll switch over to. But I think you kind of have to. It's you got to point people in the direction you want them to go.
Yeah, well said, and well deserved on the praise and success so far. The book isn't even out yet, and I imagine that's gonna triple and double by the time it comes out. But
or go downhill, and everybody hates it. Could go either way.
No, man, that's impossible. But I wanted to know, if you teasing the cover, well, not even teasing, but showing the cover issue 3, what are you most excited for people to read Thundercats? Is there a particular issue that you just cannot wait for people to get to? Is there maybe a moment, I guess without spoiling anything, like what are you most excited for people to get out of Thundercats, or an issue to get to, or something like that?
Issue 12, issue 15 probably, because that's where it'll all build to. Not all of it. I kind of have it structured as 3 arcs. So the first will be how they're surviving, and then kind of dig into some of the characters, and then kind of pay off stuff near the end, and let that be the first year. I guess issue 1, because I really want everyone to see what Drew's doing. But then again, actually Dynamite have shown half the issue online now. So really, you can probably read it already. But I think the end of the first issue, we have a bit of a cliffhanger that I don't think anyone's going to see coming. Which is going to, I'm hoping that'll catch people in a good, surprising way.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe that. I think once you've read issue 1, you'll get a sense of what the book is. After that, it's more about, I guess, for me, it's about building on the characters and giving the audience a little treat along the way here and there. So I think every issue will hopefully have something that's, if you're a new reader, it's going to be, oh, this is cool. But if you're an older reader, you'll be like, oh, I know this. Yeah. Without, I don't want one to undercut the other. So it's always trying to make sure, there's character stuff and there's action stuff. I want Drew to draw cool sequences that audiences are going to go, oh, this guy, this is a cool action sequence. But to be invested in the characters, and hopefully, reignite people's kind of passion for the characters, but also accept that this isn't exactly what they know and are along for this new ride. I think issue 1 will be the thing that'll decide that, really. The people will decide whether they're into it or not.
Well said. And
I don't know. God, now you're making me worried.
Declan, you're in good hands. You're in good hands. Look, Ben's going to sell these books for you, all right? So he's got you covered, at least down here. Declan, I'm thinking about your career, and you mentioned something about being in a very exclusive club, as far as the status that you're at, the success you've been able to enjoy, the opportunities you now get, and you're also in this exclusive club where you have worked with just about every single publisher under the sun. And I think it's safe to say that, but this will be your first time working with Dynamite, if that is true. I guess how is it working with their process? Like, does it really differ? Does the comic making process and the creative process drastically, I guess, differ depending on the publisher? And if so, or if not, like, how has it been working with Dynamite and following their process and working with their people and getting their resources?
Well, I did work with Dynamite before. I wrote a James Bond one shot a few years ago.
That's right.
That PJ Holden drew. And I did a little bit of stuff with Dynamite, the zombie book, at the start. With this, it's not more Dynamite. I'm just really working with Nate. Nate is the kind of guy building this, and he's the creative manager, if you will. I don't know, this is his baby, So it's his idea to bring me on. It was his idea to have Drew. Like so, I hope Dynamite are happy with what he's like. Whatever's coming out is due to him. So all credit to Nate. And making comics is the same no matter where you go. It just depends. Some people can be jerks or pains in the arse or what have you. I will say I'm very impressed with how much Dynamite have been pushing the book. I mean, they've lined up a million interviews for me, and like have been, especially with the pages over the week. I just really feel they've gone. I think they were getting ready, and in the last week have really gone all out pushing the book. It's always really nice to see a publisher get behind stuff, I'm not having a go at Marvel, but they do so many books. It's very hard for them, I think, to concentrate on one or give your book the love that you wish it gave every other book. I guess maybe Dynamite I think maybe Dynamite have a much clear idea how well this book would do, more than I did. I just thought this would be a fun book that some people would read. I guess Dynamite had a much clearer idea of the excitement behind it, So, to be fair to them, they really have, they've cut the ball running really, and are really, really pushing it, it's always very encouraging, when they do that, because so much, especially again, like I said, I'm used to doing my own work and trying to push yourself. It's very, very tough. It's very, very difficult. So, there's a real Dynamite seem to have a real engine behind them on this, which is it's encouraging and exciting. So, fair play to them.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off that and say that I want to give a shout out to Amy. Hopefully, I'm saying this right. Reniello, who is works with Dynamite and was the one that kind of like reached out about getting you on and a few other creatives from Dynamite. And I've never interacted with someone that is so passionate and actually follows up with emails. So big shout outs to Amy. And it sounds that,
a good, I'll say this from experience, man, a good marketing person is worth their weight in gold. I don't know Amy very well, but she set up all this stuff for me next, over the last week and the next week. Like I say, this is somebody who's used to doing this, pushing their own stuff, man. It is tough. It is tough to be, like, it's great that somebody can arrange this stuff, and you and I back and forth setting this up, but when I was trying to push Old Dog, you reach out to whoever you can, and it's not even that it's just so much time and effort just setting this stuff up, never mind actually doing it. So full credit to Amy. She's really made it so she's made it as easy as possible to set this stuff up for me, which is still taking me time and effort and whatnot, but smooth makes it so much smoother. So
agreed.
Yeah,
big shout out to thanks Amy. Big shout out to
Amy.
Big shout out to the Dynamite team. Declan, I've got about two or three more questions for you, and I've been waiting to ask this particular question because you're also part of another exclusive club within comics, and that is creators that can say they write, they draw, they also do covers, they color. You're a man of many talents. You've got a lot of tools in your toolbox, and I found this I guess you could call it an analogy that you mentioned in an interview, and I really liked what you said here. And I'm curious if this still holds weight or if it's still true for you, considering where you're at in your career. It's from an older interview. But you said that drawing from a script is like solving a puzzle, but writing is like forming the puzzle itself. And you solve it by the script phase before passing it to art. Like I said, this is like from a interview 10 years ago. I think you had just started writing. If I'm not mistaken, when you think back, when you hear that, is that still applicable considering you've written your fair share of comics at this point? You are known as a writer just as much as you're known as an artist. Does that analogy still hold weight for you now?
Yeah, I think so. I think feels like that's when I was doing the Nick Fury story at for Marvel, because that was the first story I wrote and drew professionally. Well, geez, nearly totally. And I think that was it. I think the cool thing about drawing comics is taking that script and how do you make this work visually, and some writers it's really hard, other writers it just flows. And my concern was I would lose out on that aspect of solving the puzzle. But then when I did start writing, I'm like, oh no, this is different actually. I guess you could say you're creating the puzzle, but you're kind of creating a trap. You know, you're building a map with traps and directions, you know, of where you want an audience to go and where they are going to go, and how the artist's giving them the room to plan things like so. It's that aspect of it has definitely become more interesting, you know, with the more projects I've done since. But I think what really demystified writing for me was looking at it as a puzzle, as a design project, where I thought that, like, you know, working with people like Warren or whoever else, you know, they're geniuses and they just create work from the ether and it's perfect. Whereas, you know, from a drawing point of view, sometimes the hand looks wrong and you got to refine that, or sometimes the composition isn't as strong as it could be, so you got to move something. And I took that approach to writing, and it really demystified it for me, because, you know, this 3-page scene would be way better at the beginning, so move it. You know, it's not ruined. You just constantly just kind of chip away and rearrange things into the best version that they can be, and then, you know, you go back and tighten up dialogue, things like that. I'm writing a scene in Thundercats now, and I'm like, well, this is good 3-page scene. Maybe I should go somewhere else and come back to it later, and not stay in the same scene too much. But then I realized, no, I need to hit a certain dramatic point before I move over. So all that is very design to me, you know. I'm designing the structure of it, and you know, that's all you do. You do that in art all the time. So, I that's what I think I do like that. The hard thing is actually nailing it down, and then, like, making all the characters unbelievable, stuff like that. But the more you do that, the better you get at it. But that I do still. Sorry, the answer to your question is yes. That's it. One word answer. Yes. Yeah. No. It's still very much like that for me, which I like. Like, I like solving the puzzle and I like making the puzzle, but also from writing and drawing, I like making the puzzle and then solving it. It just feels like you're just fleshing it out, and it's easier to change something in the outline than it is to redraw a page. So, like I said, same thing with, like, doing work for hire stuff and doing creator-owned stuff, or doing short form storytelling or longer form storytelling. Only drawing comics would drive me mad, and only writing comics would drive me mad, and only writing and drawing comics would drive me mad. So I have enough creative kind of resistance or freedom to keep everything, you know, healthy and fresh, I think. Like, I did more creator-owned stuff last year with Old Dog and Time Before Time, where I realized I'm writing Alien for Marvel, and that's kind of my side gig. And I would never have thought that my Marvel job would be the side gig, because my whole career mainly it's been my main gig, and anything else has been the side thing. So last year was very interesting. This year it's probably going to be more of a mix, but I think it's good creatively to push back and forth. You know, if I was only doing work for hire stuff, I'd probably be like, oh, Marvel, don't let me do this, and blah, 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 blah. Which would be very frustrating. But when I can do whatever I want on my image book, then feck it, it's fine. I'll just put my energies into that. Or if something like I said, trying to promote Old Dog last year was really, really grueling and hard. On top of writing, drawing, colouring, designing every issue, so much work. Trying to push the book was a whole other set of work. Whereas now, when I work for a hire job like Thundercats, sorry, I nearly said Thunderbolts, that a lot of that machine is taken care of. So there's benefits to both sides and disciplines, and I just feel fortunate I'm in a place where one kind of fuels the other, and the other one fuels back. You know.
Very well said. Very good answer at that. Declan, I want to take a quick detour from all of this, creative talk and talking Thundercats and comics, and take a
what a little bollocks. Fuck that.
Yeah, fuck comic books. Wait, what?
Yeah.
No. So, I reached out to Ben, who was very excited that you were going to be on the show. And then I reached out to someone else that I knew would also be very excited that you were coming on the podcast. And I asked this particular person, who's a mutual friend of ours, to submit something for you, all right? Something fun that would, maybe derail the conversation in a good way. And they came through. So I'm going to play this for you, and I think you might get a kick out of it.
Hey, Botter. Hey, Declan. It's David Harper here, and I'm a big fan of both your work, but I actually have a really important question to ask Declan, and it relates to some shocking news. Apparently,
Oh no, what happened? Oh, let me try that again.
Sure.
hey, Botter. Hey, Declan. It's David Harper here, and I'm a big fan of both your work, but I actually have a really important question to ask Declan, and it relates to some shocking news. Apparently,
I don't know. I think maybe the file got corrupted here. I'll just play it from my phone.
It's that shocking he couldn't even finish the question. The sentence.
Yeah, let me try it from the phone.
hey, Botter. Hey, Declan. It's David Harper here, and I'm a big fan of both your work, but I actually have a really important question to ask Declan, and it relates to some shocking news. Apparently, Starfleet is real, and perhaps unbelievably, they're recruiting exclusively from Irish comic creators and retailers to form the main bridge crew for the launch of the USS Enterprise. And Declan, you are actually the person they've turned to guide them. So my question is, who would be on that bridge crew? I need a captain, exo, con, security, communications, and tactical. And yes, you can pick yourself. Bonus question, who would be the first person to be assimilated by the Borg, and why would it be Stephen Mooney? Thanks.
Big shout out to David Harper from Off Panel for submitting that.
It's very
You
good.
choked up.
That is very good. And I was going to go, but can I nominate myself? But he even got me in there. See, the problem is I wouldn't trust any of those gobshites to run a ship. I did play a video game with Stephen Mooney and another friend of ours, Jamie, a Starfleet game, and it was an absolute disaster because none of us could really do the job or would just give out to each other the whole time. Let me see. Well, I'd have to make myself captain because I don't trust the rest of them. I'd make Mooney the XO, but he'd undermine me all the time. Like, you'd want somebody to push back sometimes, but no, he'd do it too much. Yeah, so no, he's Let me see. This. I feel like I need some time to really work on this. Okay, I am Will Sliney in communications because he knows what he's doing there. He'd be communications. I'd put. Oh man, see again, Nate Stockman. I wouldn't trust him. I guess I'd put him in navigate. No. Yeah, navigation maybe. This is too good a question. It's going to take too long. I feel like I really need some time to work on this.
Yeah, I mean, this is one hell of a surprise question I popped up. We've been talking for almost 2 hours, and you have been masterful with all of your responses. Leave it to David Harper to ask such a good and difficult question. It just threw you for a loop.
Oh, I'm going to think about this for a long time. I'll just throw out some fast ones just to answer the question. Sure. But with the acknowledgement that I am going to revise this later in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I would put, I wouldn't trust Mooney anywhere. I mean, Helm. I put him on Helm because at least I could just tell him what to do, and he'd have to do it. Who'd be the Doctor? Stephen Thompson on Science. Who else? So there's so many comic creators now as well. Stephen Byrne would be. I'd make him first officer. I trust him. I guess maybe Derek Landy. I'd make him like maybe third officer on ops. He'd be good, I think. I'm just even trying to think of all the people in Irish creators now, and I'm drawing a blank. It's been, but yeah, that would be the main crew. But I really think I need to spend some time on this, but that's what I got right now. That's my best right now. Sorry.
Do you want to take his bonus question, which I might do a poor job of recapping that? But it was, who would be the first one to be assimilated by the Borgs?
Mooney, because he's basically an android anyway, or cyborg. He has no human emotions, so. And I just shove him in the way to make some room for the rest of the UA team. He's right, it would be Mooney, but that would be wise because no one would even notice anyway that he'd be assimilated, and he would help me get away from the Borg.
So, I mean, listeners, if you haven't caught any of this, if none of this makes sense, Declan here is a huge, from what David told me, you are a ginormous Star Trek fan, and he mentioned that you have a Christmas sweater that also doubles as a pajama set or something like that.
It's not pajamas. It's a Christmas jumper. It's the red uniform
jumper,
from Next Generation.
Mm.
Both me and myself and Mooney and another friend of ours have the same one that we wear for Christmas.
Do you have any claim to fame when it comes to Star Trek? Whether that was maybe meeting someone from the cast, attending like a convention, do you own any props, etc.?
I mean, I literally have.
Oh wow!
Defiant
like
right
that,
here. I have all the Star Trek ships there. I've met Jonathan Frakes a few times at a Star Trek convention. Me and Mooney went to a Star Trek convention one time. Met Dax. Met Councillor Troy, Worf, LeVar Burton, Data. I had a whiskey with Wayoon like a month ago when I was at a convention. I've actually been pretty lucky. I've gotten to meet a good few of the cast. And they're all really, really nice as well. But it's the benefit of doing some of those pop culture shows I mentioned, is that you end up in a scenario where you get to talk to these people like real people, and you try hide that you're a massive nerd. You're like, yeah, I'm not like them. I'm not like those people out there. I'm actually very cool.
Yeah, that's fun. That's pretty fucking funny. So, all right, have you ever tried to lobby or set something up where you could possibly work on a Star Trek side? I'm surprised, with your okay.
Yeah, no, I mean Heather Antos, she edits all my creator own work, like Old Dog and Time Before Time, and she got the Star Trek license. Like, I heard nothing, and every time I was talking to her, I'm like, "Come on, ask." She knows I was massive because she used to edit the Star Wars titles at Marvel. I'm like, yeah, Star Wars, whatever. Star Trek's where it's at. So she knew I was a massive Star Trek fan. But no, I've actually done some covers for her. I did.
Okay, cool.
I did one for Defiant issue 1, for Star Trek issue 1. She hired me to write a short story for Star Trek issue 400. I wrote an O'Brien story with Seth Demoose. And I did another Defiant cover recently for Defiant issue 12. So I've done some covers. I mean, I'd love to do draw a story, but Star Trek would be very hard to draw. It's very technical, which isn't my strong suit. All of the technology. I like drawing kind of banged up machinery, whereas a lot of Star Trek's very clean, so I'd find it hard, but it'd be cool to do a one shot or something like that someday. But so no, I have lobbied and I have gotten, well, no, I didn't lobby hard. I just was kind of like, hey,
nudge,
thought I would have heard from you. And then, but I think to be fair to Heather, she said she was waiting. Like the first job she gave me was the cover, was a variant for Star Trek issue 1. So I mean, that's pretty cool. So I can't really complain. She did give me some nice cover offers. So and I think she knows if she ever throws me another one, I'll just do it. I'll just
hell yeah. You're like, I didn't lobby too hard. I just waited outside of Heather's house and where she worked and where she picked up her kids.
With wearing a Star Trek outfit, going get the hint. No. So
Declan, what is out there? Do you have a white buffalo? Whether it's a project you want to work with on, or someone you want to work with, what is? It sounds like you've been, you've been saying this whole interview. You've had a very fortunate. You feel very lucky to have the career you have, which is, fantastic that you are. You've got that perspective about your career. But is there anything that's still on your bucket list to do when it comes to this world of comics and working in the industry? What are you still aiming for?
Yeah, Daredevil. I want Daredevil bad, man. I've always wanted to do a Daredevil. I would have loved to do the main book, but I realized I just can't. I can't write and draw a monthly book. I just
Would you want to write it or draw it?
I want to write and draw it.
Okay, gotcha.
But I couldn't do the main series. I couldn't write the main series, but I'd love to. I want to write and draw a miniseries. I had a pitch at Marvel at one stage, and I kind of went through, then it kind of disappeared. But I think I might circle back on that maybe in a year or two, just because it was a good idea, I think, and I'd like to do it. Batman. I mean, I got to do All-Star Batman with Scott Snyder. I did like the backup stories on that, which was cool. But I mean, I wanted to write and draw a Batman story like crazy. Love to do that. So those are like, and there's random. I mean, I'd like to write and draw a proper Wolverine story. I've been very lucky. I got to do Return of Wolverine, and I've done some short stories, and the X-Men Vertical story was a Wolverine story. But I'd like to do like a 6-issue, not epic, but like a really good like
Yeah.
I'd like to, there are some characters I just like to like take for a year and do a really cool, limited run. And just have those be great, graphic novels over that. Ideally, that's what I'd like to do. Just take some characters, and there's not a lot of them, but there's definitely some that would take time. And there's not. It's more. Sorry, go on.
No, good.
I was going to say I'm more interested in writing for artists now than I am for drawing for writers, just because I've been very lucky and I've worked with great ones like Warren and Jerry Duggan and Jeff Parker and Brian Wood and Garth Ennis, I'd still love to do something with. I grew up, I was a hero of mine. Ed Brubaker, because I just love his stuff. But look, yeah, I've got to work with Hickman. So I'm done very well in that regard. But I think it's more artists I'd like to write for than writers I'd like to draw for in general. I'm not saying I'll never do it again. I might just get really tired from writing. It's one thing I've noticed now because I'm writing everything, even the stuff I'm drawing. It's just a lot of like concept work and a sort of mental energy spent. And it doesn't really feel like you're getting much done because I don't, at least when I have pages drawn, I know I'm getting stuff done. It doesn't feel like I have much stuff done when it's all Word docs, So there might come a time where I just want to take a break and just draw some stuff. But creatively, I am more engaged and rewarded by stuff that I'm either writing and drawing.
You on a Daredevil series has never made. I mean, that makes so much sense, and I don't have nearly the lobbying power you have of Marvel. But whatever petition I need to sign to make that happen, you let me know because I think that
I've made it very, very clear.
Awesome.
I haven't been. Some people say you should be very cagey about letting people know what you want to do because they can, they can like use that
against you and all that.
But I'm like, yeah, Daredevil. I want Daredevil. I did actually.
Yeah, you're like, I'll do it free. I'll do it free.
I talked to Axel Alonso when he was there, and basically we were like, yeah, cool, we should have you do Daredevil, and then he was like fired the next week or something, So I was like, that's so close, but
yeah. All right, Declan, I have one last question for you, and this is one just getting back to the introspection side of things. What piece of advice do you have for aspiring comic creators that want to break into the industry, that want to be the next Declan Shalvey? Maybe something that you wish someone would have told you early on in your career. Like, what comes to mind for advice?
I'm glad this is the last question because I actually do need to go to the toilet. So if you hear a sound, it definitely is me.
That is not tea. All right.
This is very obvious advice that people are probably don't want to hear, but I do think it is the best. Is to, if you're a writer or you're an artist, do short stories, self-contained stories that have a beginning, middle, and end, be them 1 page, 2 pages, 5 pages, 6 pages, and build up your skill set, build up your sense of self-evaluation. Everybody wants to do their 200-page epic graphic novel. But if you've never drawn comics before, you will get to 10 pages and then never do any more. But you can do 5 pages, and when it's done, you can look back at it and you can look at like your compositions and see if you could have done better, or if you're a writer, what you could have done better. And it'll make you a lot more openly and honestly critical about your stuff, because if you're in the middle of it, if you're on page 50 of your 200-page graphic novel, you're going to be very sensitive about it, and it's going to be very hard for you to look at it in an honest way. And then by the time you're finished, you'll hate the start of it. It'll be a disaster. But if you work in smaller chunks, it'll be easier for you to self-evaluate. And then the longer pieces you do will be more informed, they'll be more developed, they'll be more you'd be honing your craft much faster. Like I did that 30-page Hero Killers, and the leap between when I started it and when I finished it was huge. And then when I started the next project, again, a jump. You make little jumps the more you kind of finish projects. I would say, and also build a peer group around you that will push you to do better. I was very fortunate when I was coming up that group blogs were a thing. So me and the other Irish guys, Nick Roach in engineering. There we go. Sorry. Nick Roach is very well known Transformers artist. I'm like, of course he should be the engineer on the Enterprise. Anyway, sorry.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. See, I'm going to be doing this for weeks now. But what did I even think? What did I even think of that? But sorry, yeah, it was the Irish guys. Like we did a group blog where we did a piece of fan art every week, one piece every week, and each of us had a specific day. And we were all very subtly trying to one-up each other a little bit, and having someone to not be in competition with, but somebody to kind of push against, in a friendly way, does motivate you. And having people around you who can say, like, like I had friends recently give me a note on the cover, and I was really annoyed, but I looked at them like, yeah, actually, it's a fair point. If there's no one around you to tell you that, it's very hard to improve. Nobody develops in a vacuum. So having a peer group around you who push you to do better, and for you to have a kind of a very friendly competition with to push yourself more is good. Yeah, I think that would be the two. And also, you just have to push yourself. You have to get over it. Like, it's very un-Irish to be very self-aggrandizing. And I am very self-aggrandizing, but like I do it as a joke to compensate for how uncomfortable it makes me feel, So I just own it as a joke. But you have to push it. There's too many good people out there. There's also too many people who are actually shite, but they're very good at pushing themselves. So, why give other people an open goal if you're trying to get yourself out there? Comics, it's a competitive gig between writers, artists, colorists, whatever it is. But finding a peer group who you can collaborate with, or, like Stephen Mooney, for example, is a good example. He did a book called Half Past Danger, and a year or so ago he did a Kickstarter where he asked all the Irish guys to do a story. So, he had his property and he had everybody do a story with his characters, and that was a really fun thing, and maybe we made a book out of it. So like having people to push you and support you, and owning your shit, I guess, like really kind of without being you can do it in a way that you're not being a dickhead, like, but hiding in the back isn't, no one's gonna pick you from the back of a room and go, you're the next big thing. You have to push yourself, you have to put yourself forward. You have to be your own advocate. But yeah, that's all that's coming to mind at the moment.
That is more than enough pieces of good advice. That was a really well thought out answer. Thank you so much, Declan. We have been going at it this interview has been fantastic. I know it is getting late on your side, so we can actually wrap this up. To our listeners out there, to our listeners out there, Thundercats #1 hits comic shops February 7th. If you don't have it on your pull list, see if you can get a copy, all right? Go to your local comic shops, pick up a copy, and while you're doing that, why not pick up Old Dog Volume 1, all right? It's only going to cost you $10, and you already heard how passionate Declan is about his baby Old Dog. So pick up Thundercats #1, pick up Old Dog #1. Declan, I'm going to have links to your socials as well as your website posted in the show notes. Do you have anything you want to say as a goodbye to the listeners? Do you want to plug anything in before you leave?
I think I did so much plugging during it. I think I'll leave everybody alone. But yeah, thanks very much, man. I enjoyed the chat, mainly because I just talked for 2 hours. But no, thanks for the interest, and try out the books. I hope you like them. I think it's clear I love making comics, and I hope that comes across in the work too.
It absolutely did, and I'm excited to pick up Thundercats #1. Declan, you've been fantastic. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for your time today as well. I learned a lot and it was entertaining. To our listeners, hopefully you enjoyed it as well. You guys take care of yourselves and come back next week for a new episode, all right?